I am calling this meeting to order at 7:35 p.m. Now we move to section 2, roll call.
With 21 members present, simple majority is 12 and 2/3 majority is 14.
First, we have our introductions and reports. 3.1, messages from the student body president, where Clerk Carter will read the executive order.
By order of the student body president, Kylie Hauer, whereas promoting the safety, accessibility, and inclusivity of all students on campus should be at the forefront of university priorities, as well as the mission of Wichita State Student Government Association. Whereas the purpose of the Accessibility and Disability Pride Task Force is to champion the rights of students with disabilities by investigating areas of improvement in academic accommodations, architectural accessibility, and student employee accommodations, as well as working towards fostering a sense of disability pride on campus. The task force will be composed of faculty, students, and administrators with a vested interest in improving the experience for students with disabilities on campus. Now, therefore, pursuant the authority vested in me as president of the association by the Constitution and the laws of the Wichita State University Student Government Association, I hereby direct and order the following. Action 1, appoint undergraduate student advocate Annie Wassinger to serve as the chair of the task force. Action 2, appoint student services chairperson Adriana Owens to serve as vice chair of the task force. Action 3, appoint graduate student advocate Donna Tran to the task force. Action 4, appoint Ashlyn Wheeler to serve as a student representative to the task force. Action 5, appoint Dream President Zaylee Bell to the task force. Action 6, appoint Carla Cummings to serve as a student representative to the task force. Action 7, appoint Mia Dennett to serve as a student representative to the task force. Action 8, appoint OSAT Director Isabel Medina Kaiser to the task force. Action 9, appoint Campus ADA Coordinator Chrissy McGee to the task force. Action 10, appoint OSAT Assistant Director Jennifer Nicholson to the task force. Action 11, appoint Dr. Niles Hackinson to serve as a faculty representative to the task force. Action 12, appoint Dr. Robin Henry to serve as a faculty representative to the task force. This order shall be filed with the association office, added to the record, and it shall become effective upon filing and remain in force until rescinded by the president of the association or following other procedures. This order shall become executive law and special order to remain beyond the session.
Thank you. Okay, we move to 3.2, report from the executive branch, Vice President Fawn.
Good evening, everyone. I hope your last week of regular classes is going well. Pretty short report today, but today President Howard and I met with Provost Lefevre for our last meeting. We discussed advising, concerns within the College of Engineering, potentially creating college advisory boards for colleges that don't have any. In addition, for advising, we discussed surveys that the university sent out after appointments that students schedule and what feedback colleges received. We should be sending out the results of those surveys to the Academic Affairs Committee soon. Tomorrow, President Howard and I will meet with Dean Mai, who's the dean of the libraries, to discuss opening the library up 24/7 during finals week to be more accessible to students that are studying for finals. The Hope Services. In addition to that, the Hope Services Advisory Board will also have a meeting tomorrow, which some of our exec members will be attending. On Friday, I will meet with the student body vice president of KU to discuss food for fines, as KU is looking to implement it on their own campus. Additionally, President Howard and I will meet with Director Breyer of Facility Services to discuss campus vehicles and continue our discussion about the progress of the community garden. Finally, on Friday, the Hardship Fund Committee will have its last meeting of the semester, where we will be allocating our remaining funds. Yesterday, we met with President Howard and I met with the Vice President of Student Affairs, Hall, and we discussed concerns that we had regarding transfer students being in Korea and South Korea during the turbulent time yesterday, in addition to concerns that we had about student engagement on campus and ways that we can support students more efficiently. Last week, the Student Advisory Council continued their discussion on their priorities for Higher Education Day. Among them were open education resources and promoting affordability among the Kansas universities. They will meet again this Friday to finish off finalizing our discussions for Higher Ed Day. And I would love to meet with every one of you still during the spring and really support you on what goals that you may have for the rest of the session. I'm still working with the deans on getting a time for them to be able to meet with you in person, and or so that you can work on issues in your colleges a lot better. Um, for our Director of International Student Affairs, Monjay, over in the Thanksgiving break, they had their event where they had their Thanksgiving brunch for international students, and the event was a good success. A total of 35 students attended and enjoyed the food that was provided. The positive feedback highlighted the importance of such event in fostering community and support among international students during the holiday season. In addition to the Thanksgiving brunch, he met with Dr. Terry Hall to discuss the International Student Mentorship Program. She expressed support for the initiative and asked for a formal budget proposal for that idea, which she will forward to help secure funding. On December 2nd, he also met with Dr. Brett Bruner, who assured him that he will meet with Kim Sandlin next week to explore integrating the program as a sub-department of the transition mentors to provide structural support for international students as they come to the Wichita State campus. For our Director of Leadership and Engagement, Fritz, Freshman Leadership Council currently has their Cocoa Fun Time event right now until 8 o'clock p.m. in the Shocker Hall lobby. They're making gingerbread houses, and they have hot chocolate for students that come in Shocker Hall until 8 o'clock today. For our both of our undergraduate advocates, for our undergraduate advocate Wassinger, she has 6 active cases, 2 parking or traffic concerns, and then 4 academic cases. For our graduate advocate Tran, she has 1 parking case, and then she drafted a survey for graduate students that will be sent out for review and feedback. But that's pretty much all I had for our executive report for this week. I will stand for questions.
Are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to 3.3, report from the Speaker of the Senate. Okay, here's what I got. We've done it, folks. Fall semester is nearing its end when we have our lovely winter break to rejuvenate all of you, and I hear the echoing sniffles around the room, so we know winter is coming. And beyond that, I hope you all aren't suffering too much due to finals this week and next week. But for Committee of the Whole, I was able to meet with quite a few of you to get your ideas and to know what you're working on this during this break. But there are still quite a few of you I need to meet with, so I'll figure out a way to get those done ASAP, whether or not that's like a Zoom meeting to get those done or quick emails, whatever. And I'll make sure to get those done, but I will be writing to-do lists for all of you so you can make sure to get important initiatives done during this break time, because we have a long time to get those done. So this is like the perfect opportunity to get that stuff done. But once I have everyone's one-on-ones completed, I'll send those out just so you all can know what each other is doing and those kinds of things, and make sure we're all keeping each other accountable in this space. Beyond that, student fees comes up incredibly quickly in the spring semester, so I encourage you all to enjoy your break, but also get as much done as possible during this time, so that you can just submit it during break or pretty quickly after break or ends and those kinds of things when we hop in late January. And then also CC me on your emails, because I want to see what you're doing, and it's nice for me to be able to check in on y'all and your initiatives. But beyond that, get some treats, some hot chocolate. Everybody else in the room too, get yourself a treat. It's for everybody. And yeah, that's all I have for that, but I'm really proud of you all. It's tough to do this work, especially starting out and not knowing what's happening in this space, and you've really done it, so I'm really proud of all of you. But one more semester and then we've done it. Yeah, any questions? Okay, beautiful. Seeing none, we'll move to 3.4, report from Government Oversight Chairperson Bobbitt.
The Government Oversight Committee met informally today to discuss our initiatives for the winter and what specific projects our senators will be working on individually and as a group. And yeah, that's about it.
Beautiful. Any questions for Chairperson Bobbitt? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to 3.5, report from Academic Affairs, Chairperson Grajeda.
Hello. We were down 3 members today, so Academic Affairs met informally. We just took the time to answer any questions about tonight's packet and worked on how to properly write legislation. I've had most of my one-on-ones with my committee members. They've been going well. We've discussed where everyone is with their initiatives and made plans on how to hit the ground running when we return from break, and that's all. I will sit for questions.
Big gulp there, sorry. Had to take a sip of my hot chocolate. Okay, are there any questions for Chairperson Grajeda? Okay, seeing none, thank you. We'll move to 3.7, report from Student Services Chairperson A. Owen, since Chairperson Haynes is not here with us today.
Student Services also met informally to discuss initiatives like parking, housing, et cetera, and to discuss what break will look like for us and what after break will look like for us, kind of getting an idea of where we are and where we want to be when the break ends. I'm open to questions.
Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you. We will move to 3.8, report from the Central Office. Central Office.
Just as a reminder, after tonight, the Student Government Office will close until the 22nd. So if there is anything that you need from the SGA office, just come visit next door in 216. Abby will still be in there, but the front door will probably still be locked. So just stop by 216 and we're happy to help you. But I do encourage you to enjoy your break, and we'll see you in January when we return. We're still working out on a date for a spring retreat, but once we have that, we will get that information over to you so that you have it on your calendar as well. That is all I have.
Beautiful. Any questions? Okay, seeing none, speeding through this, I like it. We'll move to Section 4, Public Forum and Presentations. Public Forum provides a chance for individuals to have the privilege of speaking before the Senate. This is a time for the association to listen to what the community has to say, and to that we offer undivided respect and attention. I would like to remind everyone that although we allow the speakers the privilege to use this platform, the opinions of the speaker do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the association or the university. Is there anyone who would like to speak during Public Forum? Okay. Oh, Chairperson Moffitt.
Okay, thank you, everybody. I'm coming back to you not as a chairperson or as a senator, but to follow up on our last meeting regarding the allocation of funds for a truck for campus recreation. There were some questions that were asked that we didn't have an answer for at the time. We went back and reviewed the meeting, and I have answers for all of the questions that were asked. Starting with the first question of whether or not there are trucks available on campus that met the needs of campus recreation. Well, we talked to Thomas Rez. He manages the motor pool and is a mechanic in the automotive repair mechanic. He responded saying that there are a couple vehicles on campus that could pull the weight, but none of them are designed for cross-country use, nor are they available to other groups. So while there are trucks on campus, none of them meet the specific requirements and or would be available for usage. The second question of how heavy is the rowing trailer and everything else like that. The answer is we're currently topping out at about 12,000 pounds, but we are expected to go up to about 15,000 pounds with the addition of a new trailer and other stuff like that that is currently in the works. This is the reason that a new truck was needed. Having something that is built for this additional weight ensures the longevity of the equipment and reduced maintenance costs. Then for the estimate of annual operating costs, over the lifespan of the truck, we're estimating about $500 to $1,000 a year in routine costs. That doesn't include anything that comes up and those more expensive items that are non-routine maintenance. Then, looking at other funding options with the limited capacity to carry over funds within the campus recreation department, that wasn't an option. And then looking at the potential of donor funds or give me one. Yeah, looking at the possibility of donors or individual allocations specifically for that purpose. At this time, we currently don't have the capacity and the donor base to fund such a large purchase, which is why we're coming to student government for those requests. While it could take potentially money could be raised over the span of a couple years, it's currently outside of our capacity to raise the amount of money that was needed. Then for the timeline of purchase and what happens should prices change, once the funds are specifically earmarked for that purpose, then the rowing coaches have already reached out to some industry partners. The bid is being constructed, so as soon as the proposal is fully ready to go, it will be acted on. Once the money, like I said, the money is specifically allocated, then the process can begin with, and the price will be locked in while the truck is being manufactured and produced to spec. Unfortunately, due to the specific requirements, you can't just get a truck off the lot, so a truck will have to be purpose-built for this. But it's like I said, once the contract is locked in, everything is locked in there. For what happens if the bid is higher or lower than $90,000. If it is lower, the money is staying in the SGA account, so there won't be any carryover. Only the money that is actually needed will be pulled for that. If it comes in over, the options are working with the groups that will be utilizing this truck to cover the difference, or decreasing the options on the truck to make sure that we do come in under 90,000.
Okay, are there any questions? Vice President Fawn?
So I don't know if you know this, but for the maintenance costs, it would be campus rent covering those costs, or facilities looking over the vehicles while they're on campus?
So currently right now, the rowing team as a member of Campus Rec does cover all of the assorted maintenance costs. As was mentioned, most of it is handled in-house. Everything that can't be handled is done by the motor pool. So then through partnerships with industries like BG, all of the regular routine maintenance is covered.
Okay, any other questions? Seeing none, thank you. Okay, is there anyone else who would like to speak during public forum? Vice President Fawn?
Hi everyone again. I forgot to mention in my report, just to have a wonderful break, as this is our last Senate meeting of the semester. But be sure to take care of yourselves over break. Focus on your finals and focus on your academics, and really focus on yourself. Over the break, I'll be more than happy to meet with you if you ever need to meet with me online, or if you ever need help drafting legislation over break. I'll be drafting some legislation over break too. So if you ever need any help, I'll be more than happy to help you over break. But I just hope that you all come back fully rested and eager to get some work done in the spring. But if any of you have any questions now, I'll be happy to take that.
Are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak during public forum? Okay, seeing none, we'll move directly into, and also before we do, I'm feel perpetually on the edge of a sneeze, so if I sneeze, sorry. We've got to do what we got to do. But I just thought I should preemptively tell you all, because we're all friends here. Okay, Moving to section 5, approval of consent agenda. So we have those elusive November 6 minutes. And then we have 4 funding bills and then 6 organizational funding bills, all from Finance Commission. It's that tail end where people are really needing that funding. So those are put on there to expedite the process. And also because it's customary for this semester, it's what we've done. So is there any questions about anything regarding the consent agenda before I ask? Okay, seeing none. Are there any objections to the approval of the consent agenda as such? Beautiful. Seeing none. Wonderful. You just approved a lot of money for some really great orgs and a lot of great conferences. So good on you all. Now we move to consideration of pending business 6.1.
Act on request to approve AR-67-010 OSAT motor vehicles.
Okay. Senator Pang, would you like to speak during the author period? Okay.
Hi, everyone. So Senator Foster is currently sick, as most of us have been sniffling, coughing with the cold season. But this resolution is basically what we just had talked about 2 weeks ago. About 2 weeks ago, about how we want to urge the university to fund some more some utility fan for OSAC, because we are here to represent our students, everyone including. So, yeah.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Okay. Seeing none, thank you so much. We'll move directly into the debate period since this is its second read, final read, and we will go into the vote after. Is there anyone who would like to speak during the debate period? Senator Mallard?
Yeah, so as someone who's a student ambassador on campus, I actually get to see a lot of prospective students who come to campus and we actually had DSI, the Distinguished Scholarship Invitational, is 2 weeks ago, and we got to see I think there was at least like one blind student, a few other people with disabilities, and to me, being an ambassador, it's really great to be able to tell people that we have a lot of opportunities on campus, and this is something that would greatly benefit. And within recent years, in my 4 years being here, I've constantly seen more and more people with disabilities coming to campus because they know that we're extremely accessible, and I think that this is something that will greatly benefit. And I'm going to move to motion with unanimous consent.
Love your thought here. We do have to end the debate period at this point, then to go into the voting period. So, are you moving to move to previous question and end the debate period? There's thoughts. I like it. What's happening? Chairperson Bobbitt.
More of a point of information on that one. That rule has been inconsistently applied. Previously, it was indicated that the proper time was to make that motion before the debate period, or not, had closed. Could we get some clarification on when the appropriate time to make that motion would be?
Love your thoughts. Of course we can. Advisor Fonseca, would you like to advise us on that?
I think historically the precedent has been that motions or any type of motions have to happen have happened in the debate process, and that would then eliminate the vote process. So I think our normal precedent has been that it happens during the debating process
Beautiful.
for those kind of votes or amendments or stuff like that.
Okay, then we'll keep in line with that. Then your motion is in order. Adopting by consensus, we've done it before. Now I'll just ask for any objections to adopting this resolution with consensus. Are there any objections? Okay, seeing none, thank you. This is adopted as such. Hey team, it's always good to learn new things. I also just got back from a conference where they have entirely different rules, so I'm real over that. Okay, now we'll move directly into section 7, consideration of new business, and we'll move to 7.1.
Act on request to approve SB-67-147, revising the 3-year fee cycle review.
Is the author here and would like to speak? You have the floor.
Good evening, everyone. I hope that all your finals are going well, if you had any this week, and if not, and they're all next week, good luck to all those finals. This bill is pretty simple and has just mainly housekeeping elements to it. After some discussion with President Howard, Vice President Fawn, and Dr. Fonseca, we found that during the past student fee cycle, the current 3-year cycle has been working, but not at the optimal level. Many different departments and other line items have been brought back almost every other year due to budget changes that were not anticipated. This bill was written to change the student fee cycle from a 3-year cycle just to a 2-year cycle, allowing for more predictability between the department's time to present. Additionally, line items that are not part of the student fees process anymore, or departments that have been merged, or other line items were also removed from this bill. This 2-year cycle separates the departments by their anticipated budget, so not having 1 year where there's like no increase to the student fees and then another year where there's like a $20 increase to the student fees. Just balances it out so that students can predict tuition and fees a little bit better, as well as, yeah. And then if this bill does not pass tonight, we will only see 2 line items in this student fee cycle, and this doesn't make sense financially, but it also doesn't make sense from a student perspective, and I will stand for any questions.
Okay. Before we get into any questions, Advisor Fonseca, will you explain a little bit more about the student fees process, as a lot of our senators have never, done anything with student fees or don't know what that process looks like, for us to be well informed for this bill?
Yeah, so a couple of years ago, I'd probably say in fiscal year 2022, which is 21-22 academic year, was the last year that the student government went through an annual review of every single budget in the student fee cycle. Big conglomerate. We collect about $12 million in student fees annually, part of your student service fee. A chunk of that is considered the SGA service fee. Your other chunk of it is your YMCA memberships, your health and wellness fee, and then the third part of it is the athletic fee. Student government has the responsibility of determining the rate of the SGA fee and then advising on the other 2 fees. This cycle, which had just finished the 3rd year in preparation of this fiscal year, basically reallocated departments roughly to about $4 to $5 million a year, where SGA's Student Fees Commission and then the Senate went through a process of determining the rate of student fees and allocation to those departments. Over the course of those 3 years, about a half of these budgets either disappeared because SGA determined to stop funding those areas, or those areas determined to no longer ask for student fee money, or those areas no longer exist. And so where we are at the moment in the review of our cycle, to what Treasurer Wang mentioned, for this upcoming cycle, which starts in March, yep, that feels right. There will only be 2 budgets that we'll review based off of the cycle. The following year, there'll be 8. The following year, there'll be 9. So we're in a scattered process of not having our budgets aligned to where they should be in those areas. Every year, and we'll talk more heavily about this details in the spring, but every spring semester we go through this process of determining how we allocate a portion of those student fees, policies we want to set for those student fees for the upcoming year, and then determining ultimately the rate of student fees annually from there as well. If there are specific questions, I'm happy to help answer those, but hopefully that covers some general thoughts behind it.
Yes, thank you. Are there any questions? Senator Mallard?
I just wanted to ask real quick, Chapter 6, Section 2, it says the fiscal year 2026, that's fall of 25 to 26, correct? Okay, awesome.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you so much. Okay, Vice President Fawn?
I move to suspend the rules so that this bill will be the first and final read. Yeah.
Okay, what this motion does is we've dealt with this before. It's a suspension of the rules, which requires a 2/3 majority to suspend our bylaws to allow for a second read at the same date and to circumvent that committee approval. But we've already done this before. We can do it. So first I'll ask for a second. Is there a second to this motion? Okay, seeing multiple seconds. This is not a debatable motion, so we'll move directly into the voting period on this motion. Are there any questions? Senator Miller?
Are we able to adopt this by unanimous consent?
Are you referring to the bill itself?
No, the skipping of the,
No, it does have to be voted on. It has to be a 2/3 majority, but I appreciate your question. Thank you. Any other questions about this motion before we move directly into the voting period? This would just be a suspension of the rules to allow for the first and final read of this bill tonight. No questions? Beautiful. We move directly to the debate period.
Okay, so fun times. The computer did a mandatory restart about 2 minutes ago, and it is nowhere near done. So we're going to have to do a hand vote. So if you're in favor of this motion, please raise your hand. Okay, if you're against this motion, please raise your hand. And if you're abstaining, please raise your hand. Perfect, thank you. All right, it is 19 to 0 to 1, so the motion passes.
Okay, that brings us directly into the second read and final read of this bill. This also brings us into a great time where we can ask more questions for Treasurer Wong. Are there any questions? Hey, I like it. Okay. Seeing no questions, that moves us directly into the debate period on the bill itself. Is there anyone who'd like to speak about the bill? Chairperson Bobbitt?
I have a question for the central office.
Shoot, go for it.
Why is the Office of Accommodations and Testing included in year 1, whereas all of the other similar services are year 2?
I might throw that one back to Treasurer Wing to answer.
That's just because whenever we looked at the budgets to kind of balance it out, that's what we did. Otherwise, we would have to move all those other line items either to year 1 or year 2, but then you would have a really big increase one year and then like maybe a decrease or like a flat another year, and just from a student perspective, it just doesn't make sense for them. And then that way, if OSAT needed anything else, they could also budget that in to the next time. So rather than just having, they would essentially be presenting quote unquote every year, but not for the same line items. But it would allow them more time to be able to predict things.
Okay, Chairperson Bobbitt?
Secondary question for the central office. This statute has more chapters to it. Is it possible to amend a chapter that's not included, or would I have to add the chapters in to then amend them?
When you get to the point of the amendment process, you can pull whatever you want into the bill. And I would say in this case, because it is a statute, that you could pull the other areas of any part of the statute you want through the amendment process. So you could amend to bring chapter 1 into it and then make it your amendment to the bill to amend chapter 1 to read it as however you want it to say. So yeah, you can do that.
I will say, I recommend though, if you're going to do that, please have that accessible to everyone so they can view what that chapter looks like. But that's if you're going to do the motion. Okay, any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you so much. We'll move directly into the debate period. Is there anyone who would like to speak? Chairperson Bobbitt.
I wish to offer an amendment to pull the Office of Accommodation and Testing out of year 1 and put it into year 2.
Gabe, do you have that? Okay, beautiful. Is there a second to this motion? Okay, seeing a second. Thank you. We'll move, sorry, I'm also trying to read it to see the changes too. Will you restate your motion?
I moved to move the Office of Student Accommodation and Testing from year A to year B.
Okay, let's allow for 1 second for them to get that up here, and then we'll continue as normal. Okay, now that we're seeing all of that, are there any questions about this process before we move forward to the debating period? Okay, beautiful. Is there anyone who'd like to speak during this time? The debate period being this time. Chairperson Bobbitt.
So I guess I wanted to explain my motion a little bit. I do recognize the split and why the office was included in year A, but looking at the other things that are up for consideration in that year, I do feel like the Office of Student Accommodation and Testing is an outlier. If you look at year B, it's student health, counseling and psychological services, health outreach, prevention and education services. So I feel like from a finance commission point of view, it would make more sense to look at all of our student health and support services at the same time versus adjusting the allocations to one specific area of it, independent of the rest of the site of all the rest of the services.
Okay, anyone else who would like to speak during this time, the debate period? Senator Lewis, did you have something? Okay, beautiful. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak during this time? Vice President Fawn?
I'm speaking in negation of this amendment. I think the way we have it set up, where it accounts for the amount each department is requesting, is a better way besides necessary category. I think with it, I don't want to overburden year B as much as year A, so I'm fine the way it is already.
Is there anyone else who hasn't spoken yet that would like to speak? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to Chairperson Bobbitt.
I guess I have a point of information for the central office. Do we have the dollar amount of a typical request for that office? And then is there something of a similar dollar amount in year B that could be switched?
Last fiscal year, and I think we allocated them $20,000. There's nothing in year B that is that number. All of them would be under those educational opportunity funds, which the EOF funds are about 20 requests in there that average about $380,000. So there's nothing that would be of the similar $20,000 amount that we give OSAT for the one specific thing that we fund them for in year B.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
And just to clarify to everyone, we are only discussing the motion at hand, which is to move the Office of Student Accommodations and Testing to year B. Is there anyone else who would like to speak during this time? Senator Lewis?
I would like to speak in negation. While having the Office of Student Accommodations and Testing in year A may complicate prioritization of funding in that year, the amount of funding to be allocated in year B would also complicate how they prioritize allocation. And I trust their ability to not be confused by how much to allocate to what with it in year A.
Okay. Is there anyone else? Senator Enzi?
I would like to speak in support. One thing to take into consideration here when talking about having them uneven, even if they are uneven, the student fees are going to go up that amount either way, whether you have it on one year or the other. So moving it sort of matters because it changes when it happens, but instead of just having a straight line, you're just going to have it kind of rise up in a wave I don't see an issue with that.
Okay, anyone else who would like to speak during this time? Senator Mallard.
Oh, sorry. All I'll say is I'll speak in negation. I trust the finance people that they did their research and did their numbers and did their job. So
Okay, anyone else? Okay, seeing none, thank you. We'll move directly into the voting period, which let me consult over here to see if we're going to do a hand vote again.
If you're in favor, please raise your hand.
And this is to adopt this amendment to the resolution itself. Please keep your hands raised high.
Okay, if you are voting no, raise your hand. I have to write down all their names.
Read them higher.
Yeah, so I was like, this and one person.
Are you?
One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine. I'm missing one.
It was Josh, he was just
Gotcha. Okay. Okay, now abstentions. Okay, with 6 yes, 12 no's, and 4 abstention, the motion fails.
Okay, that Chairperson Bobbitt? Okay, that moves us back into the debate period on the bill itself without the amendment. Chairperson Bobbitt.
I move to, I would like to offer an amendment, specifically the introduction of chapters 10 and 14 of the relevant statute to be further amended.
Repeat your motion.
I would like to introduce chapters 10 and 14 of the statute to be amended upon.
Okay. So that doesn't need an amendment to bring those forth, but are you wanting that to be accessible to make amendments to that section? Okay, I'm seeing what you're saying, same wavelength, I like it. Do you have access to that or Advisor Fonseca? Beautiful. We'll get that up.
Can you say what you would like from chapter 10 first, and then can we do 14 when you're done with chapter 10?
I would like to eliminate chapter 10 in its entirety.
I presume we all want to see what chapter 10 is, so we'll get that up there for everyone. While we're waiting, if anyone wants to get more hot chocolate, hey, feel free. Oh, not waiting anymore. Never mind. Advisor Fonseca, if I could have you read the sections within chapter 10.
Yeah, so Chapter 10 is the special allocations of non-funded entities or special projects. This chapter governs the ability to utilize the student fees reserve at a time requested by the treasurer and approved by the Senate. The central office, which is us, with the treasurer, develops a process to take in proposals and presents those proposals to the president of the association prior to the submission of the Senate. At any regularly or special scheduled session of the Senate, the treasurer of the association shall be responsible for submitting such allocations to the Senate for review and approval. Allocation recommendations on a case-by-case basis and are only for one-time allocations for entities and non-student fee funded entities. So this is the ability to utilize the student fee reserve to fund one-time projects either for student fee groups or for non-student fee entities.
Okay, first I'll ask for a second. Is there a second? Seeing none, unfortunately that we cannot move forward with that amendment, but I will entertain your second amendment.
And you said chapter 14, right? Okay. Chapter 14 are the funding commitments, and Chapter 15 is the contingency fund and reserve policy. 15, okay.
If I could have you tell me your amendment, please.
Okay, I would like to eliminate some line 5 of chapter 15.
Advisor Fonseca, if you'll read that out.
Yeah, Chapter 15 is the policy that governs the contingency fund and reserves that sets the requirement for the student fee contingency to hold $1 million. So if you remember the session or the meeting that happened a couple weeks ago when we approved the resources to go into that. Specifically, Section 5 of this chapter talks about the ability for the Office of the Vice President for Student Affairs to sweep no more than $150,000 per fiscal year from division reserves to fund student affairs administration. So at the same meeting, when Scott Jensen was here to talk about those one-time expenditures of the year, is where we talked about the ability that the Division of Student Affairs has to sweep unspent money from just student affairs funded areas and to allow the division to utilize those for other resources as well.
Okay. Oh, geez, that was loud. Okay, is there a second for this motion? Okay, seeing a second. We'll move directly into the debate period. Is there anyone who would like to speak on this? Chairperson Bobbitt?
So essentially what removing this section would do is make it so that the Office of Student Affairs can't take money from student fees funded entities anymore. As Gabe said, the thought behind it is it's supposed to sweep unspent money. The reality of the situation is very rarely is there unallocated free flowing or like uncommitted money. These departments are holding money in reserve for specific reasons, and by sweeping that money every year, we are not allowing them to save up and utilize that money towards long-term planning. More or less, this section is just, it creates the ability for the Office of Student Affairs to pull money from departments and interrupts long-term planning. Yeah.
Okay, is there anyone else who would like to speak during this time? Also, if you're confused and need clarity, hey, ask some questions. Vice President Fawn?
I have a question for the central office, if you allow it.
Yes.
Can you explain, like, historically, how has this been done in the past, and how it kind of got started in the first place?
Yeah, great question. In the 61st session, I believe, or the 62nd, one of those sessions, there was a line item for the Office of the Vice President for Student Affairs for $150,000 that was funded annually through the student fees process. So they came and presented like other entities. In some conversations that year, that student government determined that they didn't want to keep going through the process of funding this, and instead asked that the division sweep the money from unutilized resources within again division areas only. This does not prevent, and when it was included, it does not prevent the ability for SGA to take it first. It does not prevent the ability for the Student Fees Commission to sweep it before, and it was utilized as a mechanism because that same year, unspent dollars of student fees were racking up significantly from departments that weren't spending the money that was allocated each year to these areas. And this is more information, I think, but it's kind of helpful to be aware. Student fees is considered a restricted use fund, so it is specified for a specific reason. And at the institution, there's no such thing as reserves that departments keep. So this is also why this entire section was added to only let departments keep up to 10% of unspent dollars, and then anything else could again be taken. This also still does not prevent SGA from taking all the reserves as they want to. This just allows them to maintain 10% of the previous year allocation if they didn't spend those dollars, and instead of keeping what used to be hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars within student fee funded areas. Does that answer your question?
I have another question. So, pending this removal, would it just default back to the original area to fund student affairs through student fees?
Can you ask that again? Sorry.
Yeah, so pending this removal, obviously, my question here is obviously, how would student affairs then be funded? Would it just default back to when you said the 61st or 62nd session?
That's if they submit the request for the funding. If you remember at the last meeting, Scott talked about, so part of the proposal that you all voted on for the $150,000, talked about a portion of that went to fund a position in CAPS, a portion of that went to fund a position in Hope Services, a portion of that went to support Passage to Success, and a portion of that went to fund the Shock and Drive the Dark initiative. So if this is taken out, then those either student affairs may come in to request $150,000, or those departments will come in to request the funding to pay for those areas that are funded out of this money.
Okay, are there any other questions? Senator Lewis.
I guess a question for the central office. So this allocated money that is restricted use and not used at the end of the year, because it's restricted, is there a less, or could it be made less restricted?
No. So the restricted use designation comes from the state of Kansas, and because this funding comes from student fees, it is considered a restricted use, which means in order to utilize these fundings, it has to go through the approval process that we have in place in our own statute that governs that area. Specifically, I think maybe the question, and if I'm misinterpreting the question, please let me know, but anyone who receives any dollar from this account or from these resources are bound to utilize those dollars that were originally intended to be, that were originally the intent of approval from the student government. So for example, if money was funded to Office of Student Accommodations and Testing, they can't just take that money and give it to student health because it was originally intended to be funded for one particular area. So the term restricted use solely governs the ability of how that money is spent and then allocated as well. It has nothing to do with the rules that are in the statute that governs it. It's just purely you can't take it from one thing and without approval the student government transfer it to another thing. So we also have some policies in here that say you can't make intermediate transfers of student fees from one area to another just because you want to move that money. There has to be an approval process, which is outlined in the statute that governs that process. So the term restricted use is primarily to the state of Kansas of how they identify the $12 million that we collect annually. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Awesome.
Okay, are there any questions? Senator Mallard.
So you said one of the reasons why this was made was because we had so much in unspent money, or unspent dollars. How much do we have currently as well?
So this chapter was written because of the conversation that happened that year with a significant carried forward from areas within the student fee budget. There are some that make a significant amount of sense. So for example, the Radigan Student Center has a reserves that we don't necessarily want to tap into or tap into. Reality is because, right, if one of the coolers, the air conditioner cooler goes out, they're either asking you for the money to pay for it or they're going to dip into the reserve, which is why the RSC has a reserve. Some areas, it makes sense for them to maintain a reserve, which is why this policy was created. To your point, instead of putting another $150,000 in the student fees budget, we basically at that year just swapped it out of a student fee funded line item to now you can fund it from unspent money of other student affairs areas, so that we didn't have to spend $150 in student fees in the annual student fees process to fund those for those areas. And every year, right, the use of those dollars change based off the priorities at that point. But that is why this entire chapter was written, was because at one point in that particular year, there were significant hundreds of thousands of dollars of unspent student fee dollars for a multitude of reasons, right? Could have been a position wasn't filled, and so that money stays there. It could have been a program was canceled or a service was canceled or whatever it was. So there's a multitude of reasons as to why there may be unspent dollars in those areas. Does that answer your question?
Okay, are there any questions before we get back into the debate period? Okay, seeing none, is there anyone else who would like to speak during this time on this amendment? Senator Mallard.
So I'm most likely going to abstain. Gabe's statement helped a lot because with it not being fully in student fees, that means that another $150,000 does get to go elsewhere. And I understand like they're pulling this from other places, but that also means, let's say, a lot of this of what we're talking about is speculation at this point. So we can't actually say for a fact what would happen if we pulled it or what would happen if they did ask for another $150,000. But I think that we should also, I don't know. I'm abstaining. There's just a lot that we don't know, like fully, truly what could happen, what will happen, how it will affect, how it'll help, how it will not help, and so forth.
Chairperson Bobbitt.
And to explain a little bit further, when the office came in to ask us for extra money, one of the things that was raised is why aren't we funding these initiatives and these programs directly? In my mind, at least, I think if these programs are asking for money, they need to come and present to student fees and the Finance Commission. It does not make sense to me, at least, to provide an avenue of generating and spending funding that is outside of the oversight of the Finance Commission. I think that the commission is designed for the express purpose of administering these funds, and it's important that all the funding does pass through that commission.
Okay, is there anyone else who would like to speak during the debate period on this amendment? Okay, seeing none, we'll move directly into the voting period. We have to do the hand vote again, so get ready to raise your hand for a while.
If you're voting yes, please raise your hand.
And this is on the amendment itself, not the bill itself.
Yeah.
Once again, just on this amendment to strike line 5. All those voting in favor, raise their hand a little bit higher.
Okay. Okay, if you're voting no on the amendment, voting no.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, and if you're abstaining.
Raise your hand a little higher.
With 4 yes, 1 no, and 16 abstentions, the motion fails.
Okay, this brings us back to the debating period on the full bill itself. Is there anyone else who would like to speak during this time? Chairperson Bobbitt. No, I'll go to Senator Murphy here.
Less of a question, less of a amendment or anything like that. More of a question. I'm not sure to whom to ask this to.
That's great. Ask it and we'll.
Sure. It's something that I noticed on my second read through of this. Why are there are only two schools, like colleges specifically mentioned by name, the Graduate School and the College of Fine Arts? Why are those the only two?
Treasurer Wall?
Because they're the only two colleges that we fund through student fees, not in whole, but in part. Some of their programming and some of their budget line items we do fund through student fees, but
Gotcha.
not in whole.
I
And
just
then
didn't know why.
central office can also explain more of the history behind that too.
College of Fine Arts one, it's funded to pay for free tickets for students to go see fine art shows on campus. That's why students don't pay for those tickets, because we pay for them in advance. So that's specifically the College of Fine Arts. And then the second one is the Graduate School. They request some programming dollars that are also funded. It is a very small allocation that they receive, because we also have the Graduate Student Council, which we fund in a different mechanism. And so before the Graduate Student Council existed, the Graduate School did most of the programming for graduate students. And then when it was created and then became an agency, we swapped those resources. So it's a smaller request that the Graduate School has compared to the Graduate Student Council. But that is why those two colleges, just because we do an all call to anyone who wants to apply for funding. Not everyone does, of course, but for these two colleges at least have. College of Fine Arts has been in the student fees budget for about 7 years, a little less than that, and then the same time with the Graduate School as well. Does that answer your question?
Okay. Is there anyone else who would like to speak during this debate period or ask a question? Senator Lewis. That's right. Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move directly into the voting period on this item, and this is of the entire bill itself, as this is the final read of this bill.
Okay, you know the drill now. If you want to vote yes, please raise your hand. And noes? And abstentions? All right, with 20 yes, 0 noes, and 1 abstention, the motion passes.
Okay, that moves us directly into 7.2. I'll read it. Act on request to approve AR-67-011, My WCU SGA inquiry form. Is the author here and would like to speak? You have the floor.
Okay, so as you know, we've been working on the inquiry form, and this is really just asking us to put it on the My WCU page under the student government tab. I'm just pulling up My WCU because it logged out. Under the student engagement and belonging, it has this whole box, and then under student government, it'd just be like a sublink so that if students are in My WCU and they're like, oh, hey, look, here's a form for SGA, because it is on the Instagram, but just trying to get it out there to increase the outreach of student government and as well as the transparency of student government.
Are there any questions? Chairperson Bobbitt.
Did you reach out to the central office or other relevant authorities to ask if they'd be willing to do this without Senate resolution?
I did talk to Matthew several times about this, so I don't know if he wants to say anything about it.
At Dr. Fonseca?
I saw the bill recently, but this is something that we could just easily do. However, if the resolution continues, great, but this is something that we are able to do in the, if this is what people want us to do.
Vice President Fallon, I'll allow you to talk.
Yeah, so we had a couple conversations about it. I emailed the Chief Information Officer just to have a one-on-one anyways, and this was something else I would bring up, but I'm just waiting on a response, so.
Go ahead.
It was also just to get resolutions on the floor. I know it's not hard, but it was also just so that we have something out there and to just get it out there so that people know, like, this is something we can do, and so we can remind people in case it gets forgotten, just for whatever reason.
Any other questions? Senator Island?
Who would be in charge of maintenance for the submissions of the forms, like the information collected? Who would be in charge of that?
I can say I believe it's currently the sub office, as it normally would be, and this bill would not change who maintains or also collects that data. It would just change where that data is available for people. Vice President Fawn?
Yeah, so just to clarify for the SGA inquiry form, when we receive responses and everything like that, it'll actually go through our chief of staff who reviews all the submissions that go through that form, and then he'll direct it to whoever needs to see it, and then our advisors support us in just having that form just maintained over a period of time.
Any other questions? Senator Island?
Is the form currently only accessible by request, or is it in a general form right now?
Like I said, it is on the Instagram, so if you actually go to SGA Instagram, you can click the little sublink in the description. It is there. I'm not sure of all the other places it's at, but it is publicly accessible.
Okay, any other questions? Seeing none, thank you. This resolution's first read, so it'll move to the Student Services Committee before coming back to the floor after we come back from winter break. And we'll move directly to 7.3, Act on Request to Approve AR-67-012, No Smoking or Vaping Signage Act. And the author is already here, so you have the floor.
So I know that there's a lot to this, and I know that there's been a lot of debate between people, so I'll try and give as much as I can. First, I'll talk about what this is. It is asking the university to install no smoking and vaping signage across campus. So first, be it further resolved is no smoking and vaping signage at all entrances and exits to university buildings and satellite sites. So basically that is, WC West or any other non-main campus area, as well as all the bus stops on campus, as well as the Shucker Hall, flats, and suites. The reasoning why I put the in proximity to the suicide and crisis prevention lifeline signage is because I went into the buildings and I kind of looked around, and that's just like a spot where all the other stuff is, so it's an exact spot of where it would be. The Shucker Hall does have signage within there, but there's really only like one-ish sign by the elevator and not fully all around. And then also, I have talked with the chief of police, and he is in full support of this resolution in here. And the reason why I say that is because I do mention the police department. I think I did. Yes. Urging the police department to uphold the enforcement of the policy. Now, this is not like arresting people or getting them in trouble. It could literally just be saying, hey, you're not allowed to smoke on campus. Enforcement is however they deem it necessary. Now I know that there had been talk about some wording of stuff. Obviously, we have the entirety of break to work on stuff, so if there is a difference of changing of wordings that you need, let me know. Then also I have included, I believe, every single policy statement within the Code of Conduct, as well as the Housing and Residence Life Rulebook. So I will stand for questions.
Are there any questions? Chairperson Bobbitt.
This one's probably to Gabe as well. So all the signage currently posted on campus says we're a tobacco-free campus. Do you know if there's a specific prohibition against smoking on campus, specifically e-cigarettes, or is it just specifically tobacco products?
I can actually answer that because I Googled it too. Yes, there is. Within our own student code of conduct, it is technically vaping and those kinds of things are technically tobacco products. So they do also fall under the same jurisdiction there of no smoking tobacco products and tobacco-free campus. Does that answer your question? Okay.
all of that information is actually in the resolution. So if you want, I can just read it. So this comes straight from the Code of Conduct. It does state tobacco products are defined as all tobacco derived or containing products, including but not limited to cigarettes, electronic smoking devices, vaping products, cigars, products smoked in any type of pipe, smokeless tobacco, oral tobacco, spitting producing non-spitting products, smokeless chew and snuff, nasal tobacco, products intended to mimic tobacco products that contain tobacco flavoring, and products that deliver nicotine or other than for the purpose of cessation, as approved by the FDA. Examples: nicotine packets and nicotine gum. So all of that is in here a few times, but I basically just copied and pasted all of the rules. And I did talk with Kyle Wilson, so there is a line about the charges in there. So I have reached out to authorities as well on the smoking on campus. So.
And for those who don't know, Kyle Wilson, Code of Conduct, like conduct policy, that's kind of his main area. Are there any other questions for Senator Mallard? Okay, seeing none, thank you so much. This is its first read as well, so that'll go to Student Services for its committee read, and then same as the other one for coming back for committee. Y'all, it's a night. It'll come back eventually. So that brings us to Section 8, adjournment. I know you're so excited, and I kept that sneeze in. We should be so proud of me. Okay, the Student Government Association Senate will stand in adjournment until Wednesday, January 22nd at 6:30 p.m. as Committee of the Whole, where no formal action will be taken, followed by formal session starting at 7:30 p.m. I formally adjourn this meeting into winter break at 8:45 p.m.